My fiancée thought I'd never find out she slept with her ex the night before our wedding, but at the altar, I gave her a gift she'd never forget. I stood there, heart pounding like a war drum, as she walked down the aisle with that dazzling smile plastered across her face. The same smile she wore when she came home late, hair damp from the shower, pretending everything was fine. She had no clue I knew. She had no clue that Leo saw her at the bar, that I'd seen the texts, that I'd seen the photo. I'd memorized the smirk on her face as she leaned into the man she swore was ancient history. And now she was seconds away from becoming my wife. Or so she thought. Everyone was watching, her parents, my parents, her best friends, all waiting for that I do. Instead, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, I can't do this. Not after what you did. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd walk away from Tessa at the altar, I'd have laughed in disbelief. Back then, she was the woman I planned to grow old with. We met at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by a college friend. It was one of those hot San Diego afternoons where the breeze off the ocean couldn't quite keep the sweat off your neck. I was sipping a beer, half listening to a conversation about real estate, when I heard this laugh, loud, throaty, infectious. I looked up and saw her, barefoot, sun-kissed, in a cherry red dress, holding a plate stacked high with ribs and zero concern for appearances. She saw me staring, walked over and said, either say hi or stop staring like I'm a UFO. That was Tessa, brazen, magnetic, and utterly disarming. From that day, it felt like life split into two timelines, before her and after. We went from strangers to something more in what felt like minutes. Our first date turned into a weekend. I cooked for her the next night. She stayed over and never really left. She was chaotic in the best way. She'd wake me up at 3 a.m. to watch lightning storms or drag me out to food trucks she found on Reddit. She played vinyl records and insisted certain songs only sounded right on scratched secondhand speakers. Her world was art and mess and color. Mine had been all structure and logic until she bulldozed through with a spark I didn't know I was missing. A year in, we moved into a small apartment in North Park. Rent was high and walls were thin, but she made it feel like a home. String lights in the hallway, mismatched throw pillows, Polaroids stuck to every empty surface. Even our fights had rhythm, loud, passionate, but always ending in laughter or kisses. She was fire, but I never felt burned. I felt alive. When she lost her job during the early days of COVID-19, she was devastated. I remember coming home to find her curled up on the floor, laptop on her chest, tears in her eyes. I didn't hesitate. I picked up freelance gigs and poured myself into editing projects I hated just so we could stay afloat. She called me her stubborn hero. I wore the title like armor. Then her mom had a health scare. Without blinking, I booked our tickets, held her hand on the flight, and stayed up with her in that hospital waiting room. I learned how to make her mom's favorite soup just to give her something warm to eat. I wanted to be her anchor, her soft place to land. And for a while, I proposed to her in Big Sur during a trip I planned down to the second. Cliffside dinner, golden hour, the ring hidden in the lining of my jacket. When I knelt, she gasped before I even spoke. Of course I'll marry you, she said, tackling me to the ground. We laughed until our ribs hurt. The engagement was a dream. We picked out the venue together, a beachfront spot just outside Carlsbad with white sand and driftwood arches. She cried when she saw it, said it felt like something out of a movie. I told her she was the only part that mattered. I dipped into my savings, took out a small loan. I wanted it to be perfect. For her. Caterers, bands, florals, even hand-calligraphed invitations. She said I was spoiling her. I said she deserved it. We weren't just planning a wedding, we were planning a forever. Late-night talks about kids, the kind of house we'd buy, even baby names. She wanted two, one boy, one girl. We joked about whose eyes they'd get, and whose terrible dance moves Back then, I would have sworn on everything I loved that Tessa was the one. That's why it destroyed me when I found out she wasn't. Sometimes I still remember the way she used to look at me in the morning like I was the answer to a question she hadn't even asked. She'd trace circles on my chest while we lay in bed, whispering things like, "I still can't believe I get to marry you." And I believed her, every word. That's what hurts the most. Not just that she lied, but that once upon a time, I believed every promise she made. Love like that doesn't just vanish, it rots quietly from the inside out. As by the time I saw the signs, it had already started to decay. It didn't fall apart all at once. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come with sirens or flashing lights. It whispers, slips through the cracks, and shows up in small things you can't explain, but can't ignore either. At first, it was tiny inconsistencies. Tessa started coming home later than usual, blaming traffic or last-minute wedding errands. Nothing unusual, except she used to text me updates. Now hours would pass with no word. She brushed it off when I brought it up. "You're being clingy," she said once, half laughing, but her tone made me feel like a child. Her phone became a fortress. Notifications silenced, screen always face down, password changed without a word. She used to hand me her phone without thinking. Now, it was practically glued to her. When I asked her to show me a photo from a trip, she hesitated and scrolled frantically before handing it over. One night, we were lying in bed, her head on my chest, and her phone buzzed. She didn't move. It buzzed again. Still nothing. Finally, on the third buzz, I asked, "Aren't you going to check that?" She gave a half shrug. Just Grace being needy. But something about the way her fingers tightened around the phone made my stomach twist. Then, one evening while she was showering, her phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't snooping, I swear, it lit up on its own. And the name on the screen nearly made me drop it. Matt. I hadn't heard that name in years. Her ex, the one she called her almost mistake, the one she said she hadn't talked to in forever. His message was short, "Looking forward to tonight." I frozen. She came out of the bathroom minutes later, towel in her hair, humming. I asked, "Hey, random question. Why's Matt texting you?" She didn't even pause. "He's going through something, just needed someone to talk to." Yeah, I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overthink it. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But something about her answer felt too smooth, too ready, like she'd rehearsed it. That night, I barely slept. My mind spun with what ifs. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and fake calm. I tried not to snoop. I wanted to trust her. But every time she left the house to meet Grace, a voice in my head screamed at me, "She's lying." Then Leo called. He sounded nervous. "Hey man, you got a second?" "Yeah, what's up?" "I'm at Shoreline. I just saw Tessa here. She's not with Grace. She's with some guy, and unless I'm crazy, that's Matt." I swear my heart stopped. "You sure?" "Positive. They're in a corner booth. She's touching his arm, laughing like it's a date." I told him to send me a picture. When it came through, I stared at it for what felt like forever. It was blurry, grainy, taken from across the room, but it was her, smiling, leaning in. Her hand was on his. I didn't say anything to her that night. I needed to know more. The next day, I asked casually, "How was Grace?" She's a saint," Tessa said, pouring coffee. We went over seating charts until my brain melted. I nodded. "You two stayed at the cafe all night?" She didn't miss a beat. "Yep, just the two of us." I looked at her, really looked, and realized something terrifying. She could lie to my face without flinching. From that moment, I started paying closer attention. 3 days later, she said she had to run a few wedding errands with Grace. I waited 10 minutes after she left, then grabbed my keys and drove to Shoreline. There she was, same booth, same man, same story. This time, his hand was on her thigh. I didn't go inside. I sat in my car and watched numb. Everything I thought I knew about her cracked. My fiancée, the woman I planned a life with, was building a second life behind my back. When she came home hours later, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Venue's looking perfect." I looked at her and felt nothing but cold. It was then I realized I wasn't paranoid. I was being played, and I had to decide how much longer I'd let it happen. I don't know what broke me more, the betrayal itself or how effortlessly she denied it, even when the truth was sitting in plain sight. After that second night at Shoreline, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep coming home acting like everything was fine while she snuck around behind my back. So I called Leo the next morning. "She's been seeing him," I said, my voice flat. "It's not just one drink, not just running into each other. It's a pattern." Leo didn't say much at first. Then he muttered, "I'm sorry, man. I was hoping I was wrong." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, me too." That night, I decided I needed answers straight from her. I waited until we were both home, the dishes still in the sink from dinner she barely touched, her fingers flying across her phone as she sat on the couch beside me. "Tessa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we need to talk." She looked up, clearly annoyed. "Now. Can't it wait?" "No," I said, "it really can't." I turned toward her fully. "Where were you 2 nights ago? And don't say grace, don't insult both of us." Her smile faltered. For a second, she just stared at me. Then she said, "What are you talking about?" I sighed, "I know about Matt. I know you've been seeing him. I know it wasn't just once. Leo saw you at Shoreline twice." She went pale. Her phone dropped to the cushion between us. "You've been spying on me?" she asked, her voice rising. "Don't twist this," I snapped. "You lied. Again and again, and you're still doing it." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "He sent me a photo, Tessa. I saw you. I saw how close you were sitting. I saw the way you looked at him." Tessa's eyes filled with tears instantly. She was always quick with emotion, but for once, it didn't move me. Okay," she said finally, voice trembling. "Yes, I saw him, but it's not what you think." I stood up. "Please, spare me the just talking speech." She rubbed her face with both hands like she could scrub the guilt away. "It wasn't supposed to happen, Daniel. He reached out, said he was struggling and needed a friend. I didn't plan for it to become anything, but it did." She nodded, barely. I clenched my jaw. "Did you sleep with him?" Her silence was answer enough. I turned away, pacing the room because if I stayed still, I was going to explode. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. "A few weeks?" I laughed, bitter and broken. "While we were finalizing the seating charts, picking vows?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did. You lied to me every day and still looked me in the eye like nothing was wrong." "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I was confused. I thought maybe I had unresolved feelings." "Stop," I said, holding up a hand. "Just stop." She looked at me like a stranger. "Daniel, please, I love you. I don't love him. It was a mistake. I was scared. I You don't sleep with someone by accident." "I didn't sleep with him," she blurted. I froze. "You just said—" "I meant—" She stopped herself. "Okay, fine. I did. Once. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Tessa stood, reaching for my hand. "Please, don't walk away. We can fix this. I'll cut him off. I'll do anything." I pulled away. "You already made your choice, and now I'm making mine." He started crying harder, crumbling right there in the living room. "I never stopped loving you," she sobbed. "Then you have a fucked up way of showing it," I said quietly. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, listening to her cry in the bedroom. Part of me wanted to storm out, but another part needed to sit with the pain, to feel it fully, to let it burn away whatever illusion I had left. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't numb. I wasn't enraged. I was clear. This woman, this person I was about to marry, had lied, cheated, and tried to manipulate her way through it, and still thought she could convince me to stay. Yeah. I knew then that the wedding was off. I just hadn't told her yet. Not because I was unsure, because I wanted her to feel what I felt right in front of everyone who thought we were perfect. I kept playing her words on repeat in my head. It was just once. That was supposed to make it better. Like shaving down the frequency somehow shrunk the betrayal. I thought about all the nights I stayed up editing wedding videos for extra cash while she was slipping into a booth with him. I thought about the ring I had custom made to match her grandmother's. I thought about how she kissed me the morning after sleeping with someone else. And the worst part, she probably thought she could live with it, bury it, walk down the aisle like none of it ever happened. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the guest list. I stared at it for hours. Friends, family, my boss, her cousins are from out of state. All of them were flying in to celebrate a lie. I couldn't let that happen. The next day, I called Leo and told him everything. She admitted it, I said. My voice hollow. There was a long pause on the line. Damn! I'm not going through with it, I added. I figured, he said. You shouldn't. She wants to fix it, says she'll cut him off, go to therapy, whatever it takes. Are you gonna let her? I looked out the window. The sun was too bright for how dark I felt inside. No. Leo was quiet again, then said, You got a plan? Yeah, I said slowly. I do. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding quietly and let her rewrite the story to make me the villain. If she could stand in front of our friends and family pretending to love me, then she could face the consequences of what she did. Publicly, because I wasn't the one who blew up our future. And everyone deserved to know the truth. The days that followed were a blur. I wasn't eating, barely sleeping. It was like I'd stepped out of my own body and was just watching the wreckage from somewhere above. Tessa kept acting like it was fixable. A sincere apology and a few therapy sessions would undo everything. She'd make coffee in the morning like nothing had happened, fold laundry, ask me if I want to finalize the music playlist for the reception. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and shake her and ask how the hell she thought any of this was still happening. But I didn't. I just nodded, stayed silent. Let her believe I was considering forgiveness. At night, when she fell asleep, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, counting the lies I now knew by heart. The nights she was with Grace. The sudden emotional distance. The rehearsed explanations. The fact that she had slept with another man, then looked me in the eye and told me she loved me. I kept thinking maybe I'd missed something. Maybe there was a moment, some pivot point where things had shifted and I was just too in love to see it. Was it my fault? Did I stop being enough? Was I too focused on work? Did she need something I wasn't giving? I hated that I was blaming myself. Leo called every day. Sometimes we didn't even talk. He'd just stay on the line while I sat in silence. That kind of loyalty, you don't realize how much it matters until everything else falls apart. You don't have to do anything yet, he said one night. You don't owe anyone an answer right now. But I felt like I did. I thought about our families. My mom cried when I showed her the engagement ring. Her dad hugged me like a son. The money, the guests, the months of planning. Canceling now felt like pulling the pin on a grenade and waiting for everything to implode. More than anything, I felt ashamed. Ashamed that I'd believed in something so completely, that I'd poured every ounce of myself into a future built on lies. I'd never been that guy, the one who gets played. I was careful, thoughtful, the one people came to for advice. That I was just another cliche. I remember walking past a mirror in our hallway one night and not recognizing the man looking back at me. Hollow eyes, unshaven, slumped posture, a stranger. And yet in the quietest corners of my mind, a voice still whispered, maybe she meant it. Maybe she really does love you. People make mistakes. That was the most dangerous part. The part of me that still loved her. The part that wanted to believe this could somehow be salvaged was that this was a detour, not the end. But every time I saw that picture of her with Matt, her hand on his arm, that familiar smile I used to think was just for me, I knew better. I just wasn't ready to let go yet. I wasn't ready to be the guy who called off a wedding day before it happened. But I also couldn't imagine standing in front of 100 people and saying, I do, to someone who'd already betrayed every promise we hadn't even made yet. That was my crisis, my paralysis. I was stuck between the version of me that loved her and the version that needed to survive her. And until I chose, I couldn't breathe. One night, I got in my car and just drove. No destination, no music, just me and the sound of tires humming on the freeway. I ended up parked by the cliffs near Sunset Cliffs Boulevard, the place where Tessa and I used to go after long days just to listen to the waves. I sat there for hours, watching the dark ocean thrash against the rocks, thinking about every version of our relationship, the start, the middle, the lies. I thought about how quickly something sacred can become tainted, how love can turn into something unrecognizable when you stop looking closely. I felt like a fool, not because she cheated, but because I didn't see it coming. Because I still loved her, even as the weight of what she'd done sat like a boulder on my chest. How do you love someone and hate them in the same breath? I opened my phone, dozens of messages I hadn't read. Her mom. Some friends asked if we were okay. All of them were unopened. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want advice. I didn't even want justice. I just wanted peace. That night, I sat on the hood of my car, staring up at a sky that didn't care if I was hurting, and for the first time, I admitted the truth to myself. This wasn't my fault. I wasn't broken. She broke us. And maybe, just maybe, that meant I could still save myself. The morning after I sat by the cliffs, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no lightning bolt, no grand revelation, just a quiet kind of clarity, like fog lifting. I opened my eyes and didn't feel like I was drowning anymore. Still hurt, still angry, but beneath that, something steady had started to form. Resolve. Tessa was already in the kitchen, humming to herself while she stirred oatmeal. The same scene I'd woken up to 100 times. But this time, I saw it for what it was. Routine, not intimacy. Familiarity, not connection. I sat across from her and sipped my coffee while she talked about flower deliveries and vows. I nodded and played along, but I wasn't really there. Not emotionally, not anymore. In my head, I was somewhere else, rebuilding. That afternoon, I went to the gym for the first time in weeks. Threw myself at the weights like they owed me something. I wasn't trying to look better. I just needed to feel strong again, like my body still belonged to me, even if my heart was a battlefield. I started journaling too, not the cheesy kind, just raw thoughts. Rage, sadness, regret. Questions, everything I couldn't say out loud without unraveling. I filled pages every night, and somehow, each word made space for something new to grow. Leo noticed the change almost immediately. "You sound different," he said over the phone. "Yeah," I replied, wiping sweat off my forehead. "Yeah, like you've got a plan?" I didn't answer right away. 'Cause he was right, I did. I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to marry someone who betrayed me, but I also wasn't going to let her walk away clean. If she could lie to my face for weeks, she could stand in front of a room full of people and hear the truth too. I wasn't doing it out of revenge, not really. It was about reclaiming my voice, making sure I wasn't erased from my own story. I started writing a speech. Not vows, just facts, just truth. I practiced it alone in the mirror, not to memorize it, but to feel it, to own it. And somewhere in that process, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the kind that comes from fixing things, the kind that comes from finally letting go. Each day after that became a quiet rebellion. I started reclaiming pieces of myself that I'd lost in the relationship. I called my brother, who I hadn't spoken to in months. We laughed for hours about childhood memories. I took my dog Ranger out to the trails we used to hike before wedding planning consumed every weekend. I made a playlist of songs that reminded me who I was before I became Tessa's fiancé. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror, really looked at myself, and said out loud, "You didn't deserve this." I said it again, louder. It felt stupid at first, but then the words stuck, like armor sliding into place. I wasn't healed, far from it, but I was healing, and there's a difference. Tessa noticed. She started getting nervous. Her smiles turned brittle. She clung to me more, offering spontaneous hugs, compliments, and sex, but none of it landed because I knew it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that she was losing control of the version of me who would forgive anything. She didn't know it yet, but she already had. I began setting things in motion, quietly, carefully. I spoke to the venue coordinator, called the caterer, reached out to a friend who was a lawyer to understand the contracts. I made sure canceling wouldn't bankrupt my parents or me. I thought about calling it off privately, just pulling her aside and saying it was over, but that felt too easy, too gentle for what she'd done. She wasn't just unfaithful. She made me question my sanity. She made me doubt my worth. So note, I wasn't going to give her a quiet exit. Did she want a performance? She'd get one. On the eve of the wedding, I stood alone in the guest room where I'd moved all my things. The suit I was supposed to wear hung neatly on the closet door. I stared at it for a while, wondering how many other grooms had suited up with a lie festering in their chests. Not me. I slipped on a hoodie and went for a walk under the stars. The streets were quiet. Every porch light felt like a silent witness to everything I'd carried the past few weeks. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. Because this wasn't just about a ruined relationship. This was about reclaiming who I was, about finally choosing myself. And tomorrow, in front of everyone, I was going to do just that. The morning of the wedding was eerily beautiful. Clear skies, ocean breeze, not a cloud in sight. It was the kind of day brides dream about. And Tessa was glowing. She floated around the suite, laughing with her bridesmaids, holding her champagne flute like she was already celebrating a victory. But I wasn't nervous, I wasn't scared. I was focused. I dressed slowly, deliberately. Every button on my shirt felt like a countdown. My groomsmen kept things light. Jokes, backslaps, forced smiles. But Leo knew. He pulled me aside right before we walked out. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm ready." The venue was stunning. Rows of white chairs, flowers lining the aisle. The Pacific behind us was calm and endless. Guests smiled as they took their seats, none of them knowing what was coming. When the music started, I walked out and took my place at the altar. Tessa's bridesmaids came down first, beaming. Then the music changed, a wedding march. Everyone stood, heads turned, cameras raised. And there she was, Tessa, in a white lace gown, her arm looped through her father's. She looked ethereal, like a fantasy. But I saw her differently now, not as a dream, but as the person who broke mine. She reached the altar, handed her bouquet to her maid of honor, and turned to face me. Her smile was wide, unguarded. The officiant began his speech about love, commitment, and trust. I barely heard it. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. When he turned to me and asked, "Daniel, do you take Tessa to be your lawfully wedded wife?" and took a breath and said, loud enough for every guest to hear, "No, I don't." A ripple went through the crowd. Tessa blinked, confused. "What?" she whispered. I turned to the guests. "I am sorry to interrupt, but I need to be honest with everyone here." Tessa's face went pale. For the last few weeks, while I was planning our future, Tessa was sneaking around with her ex. Gasps. Audible ones. Someone dropped their program. Tessa stepped forward. Daniel, don't. I held up a hand. Let me finish. He lied repeatedly. Told me she was with friends when she was at bars with him. I have the texts, the photos, the nights she said she was finalizing seating charts. She was sitting in a booth, laughing with the guy she used to love. People were frozen. Some looked at Tessa, some at me, some just stared at the floor. This wedding was built on lies, I continued, and I won't spend the rest of my life pretending it wasn't. Tessa reached for my arm. Please stop. We can talk about this. No, I said. You had weeks to talk. You chose secrets. Her father stood, face red. Is this true? She couldn't even look at him. I turned back to the officiant. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Then to the crowd. Thank you all for coming. There's still food and drinks. Might as well enjoy the party. Just not a wedding. And with that, I stepped away from the altar and walked down the aisle, alone. As I walked past the stunned guests, whispers erupted behind me. Some people gasped. Others muttered things like, I knew something was off. One woman actually clapped her hand over her mouth in shock. Tessa's mom was frozen in her seat, face drained of all color, while her maid of honor reached out, unsure if she should follow me or stay by the bride's side. I didn't stop walking. At the back of the aisle, Leo was waiting. He gave me a nod, then quietly fell into step beside me. Are you okay? He asked under his breath. Better than I've been in weeks, I said, and I meant it. Outside the venue, the sun hit my face, and for the first time in a long time, I breathed fully. No weight, no lies, just open air and the sound of the ocean behind me. Man, Leo said, letting out a low whistle, you just went full gladiator in there. I cracked a smile. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. We stood there for a moment before I pulled out my phone. The screen was already lighting up with text, Tessa, her mom, and even some mutual friends. I handed the phone to Leo. Do me a favor? He took it. Sure. Delete everything from her. He didn't hesitate, gladly. And then he looked at me. So what now? I looked out at the waves. Now? I go find out who I am again without her? I didn't feel like a victim. I felt free and maybe even proud because I didn't let betrayal break me. I faced it, spoke it, ended it on my terms. The days after the wedding felt like living inside an echo chamber. Everywhere I went, my phone, my email, even the damn grocery store, I could feel the fallout rippling outward. People talked. Some whispered. Others stared. A few, mostly guys I barely knew from work, messaged to say respect or you did the right thing. But then there were the others. Tessa's mom left me a voicemail that started with, how could you humiliate her like that, and ended with, you'll regret this. I deleted it without blinking. Her friends posted cryptic Instagram stories with quotes about betrayal and emotional immaturity. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Leo had uploaded the photo of Tessa and her ex at the bar into a shared drive, just in case anyone needs receipts, he said. Turns out, a few people did. Because while Tessa spun her story, claiming I got cold feet or panicked under pressure, facts are hard to bend when you're leaning into someone else's ex in a dimly lit booth. But still, I wasn't naive. I knew I wasn't going to come out of this clean. My parents were supportive, but disappointed. Not in me, but in the entire mess. My mom cried when I told her everything. My dad just nodded, quiet for a long time, then said, better now than 20 years and 2 kids in. That hit harder than I expected. Tessa texted, called, emailed, showed up to my apartment once. I didn't let her in. Her messages shifted like waves. First apologetic, then defensive, then blaming me. One said, we could have worked through this. The next, you never really loved me. But I had, that's what made it worse. I loved her, I trusted her, and she gambled all of it for someone she'd already left behind. And now I had to live in the wake of it. Some people at work avoided me like heartbreak was contagious. A few coworkers asked quietly if I was okay, but I knew they'd heard the gossip. The weirdest part? I didn't care. I wasn't proud of what happened, but I wasn't ashamed either. I did what I had to do. Leo and a few of our close friends took turns checking in. We met up for beers, had long talks, and laughed more than I expected to. It felt good, real, like something solid in the middle of all the wreckage. A week after the wedding, Tessa showed up again. This time I was home. She looked tired, her makeup gone, her hair pulled back like she hadn't slept. She held a folder, probably filled with printed messages or some rehearsed apology. "Daniel, please," she said, "just hear me out." I didn't open the door, I spoke through the crack. "There's nothing left to say, Tessa." She started crying, hands shaking. "You don't have to forgive me. I wanted to explain, but I already knew the story, and nothing she said would make it unhappen." "I don't hate you," I said, "but I can't respect you. That's worse." She stood there in silence, and for the first time, I think she realized it really was over. That night, I slept like a rock. Slowly, things began to shift. Friends stopped asking questions, my phone stopped buzzing with rumors. The silence, once sharp, turned soft. And then one morning, I woke up and didn't think about her at all. I felt like a victory. A few months later, I ran into one of Tessa's old coworkers at a networking event. She approached cautiously, like she didn't know which version of me she'd get. "I just want to say," she said quietly, "you handled that with more dignity than most people would have." I nodded, said thanks, and moved on, but her words stuck with me. This wasn't just about a wedding, it was about a line in the sand, what I'd tolerate, what I wouldn't, who I was when everything fell apart, and more importantly, who I refused to be. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't broken, I was just done. Done making excuses for someone else's choices, done pretending love alone was enough, done letting someone else's lies shape my story. Now, when people ask what happened, I don't flinch. I say I dodged a bullet, and I say it with a smile, because I did, and I'm still standing. Better, smarter, free. I went back to the gym, started running again, signed up for a cooking class just because, for the first time in years, I was doing things for me. Not for us, not for her, just me. The apartment, once filled with wedding magazines and planning binders, became mine again. I threw out the remnants, the name cards, the save the dates, the honeymoon brochures. It felt like clearing a battlefield after a war. One night while clearing my inbox, I stumbled across the draft of my vows. I read them once, then deleted them without a second thought. Because the man who wrote those words, he was gone. In his place was someone new, someone sharper, quieter, but stronger. A man who understood that love doesn't just need passion, it needs honor, it needs respect. And anything less isn't worth the price. 6 months later, I finally felt like myself again, or maybe someone new entirely. I didn't wake up thinking about the wedding, or Tessa, or the lies. Instead, I thought about what I wanted for breakfast, which trail I'd run, and which part of my life I wanted to rebuild next. The silence in my apartment no longer felt empty, it felt earned. People say time heals everything, but that's only half true. Time just gives you space. Healing's something you fight for every day, every hour. Somewhere between deleting old voicemails and trying a cooking class on a whim, I found a version of me I hadn't seen in years. Not the guy who played it cool, not the fiancé planning the perfect life, just me. There was a woman in that cooking class, Harper. She was all warm eyes and dry humor, and she made fun of how I diced onions like I was afraid of them. We didn't exchange numbers, just laughs, but when I walked home that night, I caught myself smiling. Not for her, for me. It was the first time I'd felt something close to hope. I didn't chase it. I didn't chase anything. I let things come when they came. I boxed up the wedding photos without a saying, said goodbye to what never was. I stopped explaining myself to friends, to family, to her. I didn't owe anyone that. I ran more, slept better, ate cleaner, laughed harder. Most of all, I trusted myself again. Some weekends, I'd see couples in the park, holding hands, planning futures, and I didn't flinch. I just hoped quietly that next time I'd choose better. That I'd choose someone who chose me back every day without conditions or lies. Maybe that'll be Harper, maybe not. We crossed paths again last week and talked about sourdough and movies. She made me laugh, that was enough. The truth is, I don't need a perfect ending. There's an honest one. And this is mine.